Welcome in to a special evening editorial here on the KE Report. It's an evening for me and everybody in North America, but for my guest, Jayant Bhandari, it is the early morning in India. He is actually in India right now, and that's why I wanted to have him on the show for the special editorial. Usually we talk resource companies, but on this editorial, I want to find out firsthand as to what is happening on the street down where Jayant is. So Jayant, to kick us off, I think a lot of us have read the articles for how the leader in India, Modi, has essentially banned the use of 501,000 rupee notes. Can you take us through what it's actually like being in India right now?
Well, Cory, thank you very much for having me today. There is a huge amount of chaos on the streets here these days for the last 2 or 3 or 4 days. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister, who actually does not have authority over the central bank, decided to ban usage of rupees 500 and rupee 1,000 banknotes, which means that pretty much 88% of the currency in use is no longer legal tender. Most of this currency is in the hands of everyone, including the poor people, and poor people cannot even exchange what they have into what can be used today. And the big problem is it takes about 2 hours for you, minimum 2 hours, to exchange about 4,000 rupees, which is equivalent to about 55 American dollars. That's all you can convert into in any single day. Bank accounts, you can't really take much money out of bank accounts anymore. So bank accounts are mostly frozen in terms of cash transactions. So it's a very chaotic scene in a country where a lot of transactions are actually cash transactions. Businesses are failing, the small businesses are failing. And the reason given by Modi is that this will somehow remove corruption, but the only exception he has made is for people who are the only corrupt people in the country, who are the public servants. So public servants cannot be chased by the tax office and the police anymore. So I'm not sure what is the real reason behind it, because using the rational mind, you cannot understand stupidities and irrationalities. India is in a major crisis right now, in my view.
So, Jayant, I want you to walk us through how citizens actually need to get their notes exchanged. I actually have 2 friends that are traveling in India right now, and I've seen pictures of what they've posted, and looks like long lines outside of banks where people need to line up. And what process do they actually go through to get this money exchanged?
Right. So firstly, Cory, Indians mostly do not understand what lineups are about. So they crowd in a circle. But assuming that they line up, the first thing that you have to do once you get into the first big line is to get a form from an officer. Then you fill up that form, in which you fill up all your personal information, serial numbers of the bills, your cell phone number, etc., etc. Then you go and get a photocopy of your ID card made. Now remember, about 1/3 of Indians have no concept of what an ID card is, so they are really in a big trouble. But assuming you have an
ID, the poor people can't get their money exchanged?
Yeah, but Cory, remember, this is a wretched poor country, which is more poor than most of Africa is. I mean, this is a horribly poor country. These people don't know what ID cards is. Okay. Now, they have to get their photocopy of their ID card and then go to an officer to get it verified and stamped. Then he needs to get into another lineup to then get, with these 2 pieces of paper, which is a huge environmental crisis in my view. With 2 pieces of paper, he then goes to a cash teller to get his money converted into usable money. Now, all these 3 or 4 lineups are long lineups. If you're very smart and if you're a sort of a big bully kind of person, you might get this whole process done in about 2 hours. I repeat, 2 hours to convert 4,000 rupees, which is equivalent to about 55 American dollars. The people's lives are in a very bad shape today, particularly of the poor people.
So, Jayant, to me it seems that when you put these restrictions on currency and then even further make people waste their time going through all these lines, what's going on with the economy in India? It must be slowing down and struggling. People don't even have time to go to work because they need to figure out how to just get money for their daily living.
So, Cory, remember, this is a very backward, irrational, superstitious country. And I have to say, people of this country do not have a moral instinct. And this is the one big reason why these people are poor in the first place. Now, what is happening is that the so-called educated middle class are salaried people. This issue does not bother them. They have debit cards, they have credit cards, they go to their offices, and they send their servants to exchange money for them. So they can take a higher moral ground in a very hypocritical way because they are not being troubled by the whole thing. Although I think they are completely wrong because a big tornado is on its way right now, but they can take a higher ground. They are saying that poor people are suffering, but so what? This is for the good. This is for the larger good. So poor people are in a bad shape. And most of the economy is actually cash economy in India. And the problem is with these small businesses who have to have a lot of cash with them, and this cash is no longer usable. If they go to the bank, police and the tax office will trouble them. So this is basically an indirect confiscation of money from these poor small businessmen. And this is the real backbone of this country. So they are basically, in trying to tax them and trying to increase collection of taxes, government is trying to basically destroy the backbone of this economy.
So is that the whole goal behind this, do you think? The reason why Modi put these controls in place is to either generate more money for the government or crack down on people that have been trying to avoid taxes?
Well, the only corruption I have ever seen in India, of course, and anywhere else in the world is among the public servants. And public servants are mostly excluded from this problem because they have all their internal connections to get their money converted into new money. I know as a fact that bagfuls of cash are being converted into new money by these bureaucrats. So bureaucrats and politicians have no problems at all. Now, is it to control corruption? No way. Corruption has skyrocketed in the country right now. There's corruption everywhere right now. Young kids are taking money and lining up to get the currency converted, and they get 10 or 20% commission out of it. So this is a good entrepreneurial thing to do, except that their mind is getting focused not on wealth creation, but by trying to make money out of finding loopholes in the system. Tax department is getting hugely well paid in bribes right now because they can now chase people, and people are so scared right now, the small businesses, that they are happy to pay whatever money the tax officer or the policeman wants them to pay. The country is rapidly becoming a police state, actually. And this has been happening, Cory, for the last 2 months. I have talked with you about this in a couple of recordings of yours in the past. And people have laughed at me that Modi was actually a good business-minded guy. And actually, IMF has coming out in support of Modi, that he is helping the business of the country. But really, this is going to have a huge problem for this country going forward.
So, Jayant, are people not worried or angry at Modi for doing this? It seems like not only a massive inconvenience, but also something, at least to people that read news in North America, such as myself, a surprise. You would think that there would be some sort of a rise up, but is that happening?
Well, as I said, this country lacks moral instincts. It's an irrational country. The salaried, so-called educated people lack moral instincts. They don't want to stand for what is right. They want to stand for what looks good. The poor people don't have reasoning capacity to understand that it is the government which is causing them the problem. So they take out their anger on the guy standing next to them in the lineup at the banks. So they fight. They're fighting all over the country right now. So that is where the problem is right now. But my thinking is that liquidity crunch will actually increase. And I'm actually writing an article on this right now. If you do basic math, I think liquidity will evaporate within a week or so from the country, which means that these people will then start facing problems. So not because of moral instincts, but because of the problems they will start, all of them will start facing, will result into, in my view, something really big socially and politically over the next few weeks.
Something this massive, I could see why you would think that it could blow up for lack of better terms, into a big situation for the government and for the people. But it seems like right now, from what you're saying, is that people are just trying to get by and they're not trying to solve this problem. Is there any light at the end of the tunnel where it doesn't fall into the situation, the bad situation that you outlined?
Well, if that has to happen, government has to bring in liquidity rapidly over the next few days, which means that they have to replace 88% of currency notes within the next couple of weeks. I think that is impossible even for very efficient governments like governments of the US or Canada. In India, where they have never undertaken a major project, when they actually cannot do this thing. I know it as a fact because they are unskilled, irrational, incompetent, corrupt people in the government. They actually cannot deliver on it. I would be truly surprised if they actually manage to bring in liquidity in the market in the next couple of weeks. I think it is almost impossible for the system and institutions that we have in India.
So you mentioned that Modi is going above what he is technically able to do by implementing these controls. What's the central bank in India doing about this? They're just letting him run with this idea?
Well, he recently appointed his puppet, a friend of his, as the head of the central bank. So he now pretty much directly controls the central bank. And really, Cory, there are elections in 3 provinces in India very soon, 3 or 4 provinces. And this is Modi's ways of communicating to the salaried middle class who have no moral instincts. It is his way to communicate to these people that, listen, we are doing something. When Modi has completely failed to do anything about corruption or anything about in terms of liberalizing the economy. But of course, what he's doing looks good to the World Bank and IMF, because World Banks and IMF like one big government. They like increased taxes. They like better collection of taxes rather than liberalization and enabling small businesses to grow.
But these institutions like the World Bank also like to see economic growth. This, to me, seems like it's putting a damper on economic growth.
Sure, they do want to see economic growth, but listen, these are people sitting in Western countries or sitting in bigger cities in New Delhi, and these are people who did their MBAs and financial courses, and they want to implement on India Western institutions, which actually don't work. You can't really have the kind of institutions that the West has because Western culture is different. Western people are relatively rational people. These are irrational people. They don't trust their institutions. You can't really force Western institutions on these people. So IMF and World Bank thinks that enforcing Western institutions will improve things in India, but really it will only make things much worse in this country.
So, Jayant, when people are exchanging these 500 and 1,000 rupee notes, what are they getting in return? Just lower denominated bills?
Yeah, 100 rupee note, which is about $1.5 US. So I now walk around with my pocket bulging out with currency notes.
Okay, Jayant. So you do hear a lot of Indian people looking at gold. They do look at gold quite favorably. Is this driving people into the precious metal? Because I have seen some numbers that have said that the gold price has actually skyrocketed in terms of the rupee?
Well, in US dollar term, if I want to buy gold today, I will very likely not find gold because gold markets have got depleted. But if I do manage to find gold, and I'm not exaggerating, I will end up paying closer to $2,800 or $3,000 per ounce of gold. I repeat again, $2,800 to $3,000 US for every ounce of gold that I can find. That is the situation today. And I know this is a huge disconnect from what is happening in the international market, but that shows the kind of desperation that savers have in the country today.
Well, it shows what fear and instability, especially in terms of currency, can do for the gold price. I think this is a great real-life example of what can happen when a currency gets put under huge political pressure. Is there any other asset that the Indian people are looking to for some sort of protection?
Gold is truly one of the things that is being chased right now by people. But also remember, there are rumors running around the society right now. People are closing their bank lockers. They are hiding, they are burying their wealth underground. People are just extremely scared because they can see a police state walking in.
Do you think that's what it's turning into, Jayant? It sounds like you do have these concerns, but is that what it's going to end up being?
Yes, Cory, this is becoming a police state. It is becoming a Hindu fanatic state and a police state very rapidly under the rule of Narendra Modi.
Wow. Jayant, I appreciate you spending some time with us, taking time out of your Saturday morning to share what is going on in India, because the stories that we're getting do sound bad, but I think it's always valuable to hear from somebody on the ground. So I very much appreciate what you have to say. Please keep in touch. Send me that article that you are writing, and I will be sure to post it on our website. Jayant, stay safe, and I greatly appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much, Cory.